My creative story begins with my grandmother. In Northampton, England, 1975, she once told my mother a story about how a possessed dress haunted a woman in her village. When they tried to burn the demon out of it, the dress levitated upright above the flaming pit. I was 6 when my mother told me this story, and I was filled with fascination. My eyes opened wide, and I imagined my elusive grandmother standing before the dress in the fire, feeling its wickedness firsthand. Months later, my grandmother claimed that the same demon now possessed her. It tortured her relentlessly. The vile thing whispered curses in her ear, taunted her, punished her for tarnishing its silk vessel. The whispering worsened, and my grandmother started stuffing her ears with cotton to silence its incessant muttering. The demon told my grandmother to stitch it a new dress so that it may leave her weakening body. My grandmother obliged, and the wicked thing left her after a decade of supposed torment. My mother never believed her, but I, on the other hand, didn't know what to believe. Was my poor grandmother simply a victim of God-hearing, a mysterious ailment that plagued the brains of early humans and Grecian heroes, tricking her into thinking she heard the voice of a vengeful entity? Had her fears manifested themselves into something more sinister and audible? My grandmother was no Achilles, was she? Years later, I would meet a demon of my own.
This is the real weepy and light tragic part of the story beginning, oh my brothers and only friends.
Entrapment. When I was 11 and living in the middle of East Jesus Nowhere, Arkansas, I went to Lake Wichita with my mother, father, and some family friends. Our friends had a speedboat, and so we took it out into the middle of the lake to swim around for a while and drenched ourselves in warm sunlight. My mother and I leapt into the lake, and just as I started to drift onto my back, my mother screamed. She flailed around, and her eyes grew wide. In panicked breath, she said she felt something catch her leg. When she reached down to touch whatever it was, she pulled out a mass of thick, viscous seaweed from the water. This sent her into a panic. The seaweed continued to slink its way toward us like a horde of snakes. The mass began to wrap its slimy tendrils around our waists, legs, and arms, trapping us in a cocoon of grassy sludge. The plant seemed to delight in our struggles, and the more we flailed, the more it came. My father, still on the boat, eventually pulled us on board 10 minutes later with much difficulty. As my mother's face went white, and as the blood flow in her legs started to halt, I felt the demon cutting off the flow of inspiration within me with his claws. The whispers were silent, and as we sped back to shore, I felt the block begin. When I was 7 years old living in Germany, I met a demon of my own. It surged into me one night after a day of sledding and scaling castles. It phased through my epidermis and spread itself out in my organs. It made a home in me. It twisted its way into my intestines whenever I grew nervous. It sent rushes of blood to my 5th grade cheeks whenever some cute person passed me by. It flipped my stomach over whenever I delighted in fleeting moments of inspiration. I became its vessel, and it became my muse. It willed me to create art out of words, and somehow I started to think my grandmother's stories were true. Creative inspiration is a powerful thing, and it can feel so overwhelmingly pure that it causes you to think something mystical may be at work. Science says this emotional response is due to synapses in the brain firing off all at once. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "You need chaos in your soul to give birth to a dancing star." I had that chaos swarming inside of me, and a month later I wrote my first book about a penguin with a sore beak. It won me an award, and I fully let the demon take me on a creative journey. These days, I am friends with my demon, but I don't rely on it every time I need a surge of inspiration. I am able to willingly conjure up inspiration forged from the memories of my childhood experiences. As I write, I can hear my grandmother's thick Guyanese accent whispering to me, "You can't just throw the devil away, Pickney. You either got to drag your ass back to the flames, or you best go on and make friends with it." I jumped in, and I never got out.